special school safari. Can you believe what we have here? A whole lot of lions. Now, my name is James Henry, and on camera today is Sebastian, and we have got another special friend with us, and his name is Ronald, and he's a little robot, and he's going to try and see if he can get a nice close tortoise eye view of these magnificent lions. These lions are called the Nkuhuma pride, and they're named after a tree that we get in this area called a brown ivory tree. They're a very famous pride of lions, this down here in the woodlands of South Africa, and they've been sitting here in the shade all day long because it's so very hot here. Tyan, you're wondering if lions have a king. Well, they do sort of. Now, I wonder if you're not asking that because you've seen the Lion King movie. Well, it's a little bit like that, but not quite. There are 4 kings in this area, 4 male lions that dominate or rule over this area, and they have got 2 prides. This pride of lions called the Nkuhumas, and another pride of lions called the Styx pride. And those are the prides that our 4 kings, who we call the Birmingham boys, that's what we call our male lion kings, those are the 2 prides that they call their own. And all of these little lions that you're looking at in front of you, those ones there are about a year old, they are all the sons and daughters of the Birmingham boys, or our 4 kings that we have over here. But we won't see them here today because they don't always spend time with this pride. Now, Sincere, you are asking how on earth these lions survive in the wild. Well, you know, they're very good at hunting. That's what they do. And so what they have to do when they're hungry, which is probably every 2 to 3 days or so, they must hunt something. They will catch an antelope like an impala, or this pride, because it's a big pride now, there are about 11 lions in this pride, they will hunt something enormous like a buffalo. And without that ability to hunt, well, then they wouldn't have anything to eat. And in fact, 2 of them the other day hid and ate a zebra. Just 2 of them and 1 little cub managed to catch a zebra, and the rest of them didn't even know about it. Can you believe it? Sometimes lions are not very nice to each other, and they don't share so well. Now, Grant, you're obviously very interested in animals, and you say, how many cubs can a lion mum have? Well, a lioness can have around about 4 cubs at a time, sometimes as many as 6, sometimes as few as 2. So sometimes 3, sometimes 2, sometimes up to 6. Normally somewhere around 3 or 4 cubs.
Sorry about that, everyone. I know James got cut off mid-sentence, but we're just having a problem there technically. But nothing to worry about. The guys will fix it very shortly. But we are still with our banded mongoose, and I'm so excited to see this. This is really, really special. Now, Taylor, that is a very good question. We've spoken about lions who sleep a lot and elephants who hardly sleep at all. A mongoose is kind of like a human being, but they maybe sometimes sleep a little bit longer. So a mongoose of this particular type of mongoose doesn't like to be out at night. So as soon as the sun goes down, which is at about 6:30 in the evening, they go to bed. And they're actually quite late risers. They're a bit lazy in the morning. They wait until the sun has come up and is shining on the termite mound, and then they come out and they bask in the sun, just like they're doing now. And only after they've warmed themselves up and everybody's groomed each other like they're doing now and reaffirmed the bonds, in other words, make sure that everyone knows that they still love each other, then they head out and they go hunting. So that means that they probably sleep around about 12 hours a night. Now, they're not necessarily sleeping the whole time. Sometimes somebody moves about and there's a lot of squeaking and shuffling, and then everybody gets comfortable again. But they are hidden away for about 12 hours. So what these mongoose are doing, I mentioned it earlier, is they are grooming each other. So they're picking up little ticks and fleas and any parasites that might be in the fur, making the mongoose feel very itchy. Now, they are grooming each other because, first of all, it's really helpful, but also it feels good, like somebody brushing your hair. It's always a nice feeling, and so for the mongoose, they like doing that, and they do it for each other. It's called allo grooming, and it's a way of basically saying, I love you, we're all together, and we're one big happy family, essentially. Now, they can do that to actually basically say, especially to the more important ones, you are important, you are higher ranked than me. Just like they've been doing with this female and her babies, her tiny, tiny little ones. I'm really sorry, Megs, I did not get that at all. Could you repeat that? Here we go, scratching through the fur. Okay, I'm blocking up the entire road here because I just got so excited about the banded mongoose. Let's go across to South Africa to go and have a look at a really beautiful, beautiful bird with a very loud voice.
Welcome to everybody out there and to the schools. Welcome to your Safari Live Drive. I hope you're having a wonderful time so far. My name is Steve Falconbridge and I'm joined by Davy on camera. And we are at Treehouse Dam in Djuma, South Africa, and we have got for you a woodland kingfisher. This is a wonderful little bird that comes all the way from sort of north central Africa down here in our summer months, which is now, for feeding on insects. Can you believe it? Doesn't come here for safari, it doesn't come here for the big five. Comes here to feed on insects and to have little babies. He's a beautiful little specimen, and we are finding him here right next to the water, and if his name says kingfisher, does not actually mean he feeds on too many fish. But being down here by the water, he is probably having a little bath, he might be catching some insects that are here, and also maybe having a little drink. So there are a number of kingfishers that do feed on fish, and this one is mainly on insects. Natalie, you ask a question, does it ever snow? It does snow on some of our mountain tops, but in general over South Africa there's not much snow. There are certain places, but it is a very, very rare occasion. Now, when I was 1 year old, very long time ago, it snowed in Johannesburg, which is sort of the center of the country. It snowed there a huge amount. I think about this much snow, which in South Africa context is a huge amount. But in general, no, we don't get much snow here. But in the top of the mountains that we have, we do get some snow there from time to time in very cold winters. But we are very far from that. It is a very warm, sunny day this summer day. And we have a beautiful kingfisher. Beautiful to just listen to the sounds. Karina asks, what type of fish do kingfishers eat? Now, the only two kingfishers that we find here, or three, that we find here locally that feed on fish is the malachite. Oh, there we go, he's having a bath. Malachite kingfisher, the pied kingfisher, and the giant. And they will feed on what we have, small bream, tilapia, the small different carp species that we find in the rivers, maybe even baby catfish. We don't get too many different species of fish around, but the size of the bird will determine the size of the fish. And those three species of bird that I said, the malachite, the pied, and the giant, are all very different in their size. So they feed on different size of fish. But this guy is mainly, I think you can see how he's giving himself a little shake there. He just wets his body and then flies back up again. Alexander asks the question, why are the beaks so pointy? That is a very good question. Alex, all birds' beaks are designed to deal with things like we have hands. Every bird you see has got a beak that is designed to operate or to work like its hands. So these birds feed on insects or on frogs or on fish. And that beak is quite sharp for holding the prey, sometimes for smashing it against the log, And also with the kingfishers themselves, the ones that plunge dive, the sharp beak allows them to dive into the water without breaking too much of the surface. Have you ever dived into a big lake before? You always jump with your feet first, or in a pool you jump with your arms first. It kind of breaks the surface tension of the water, and I think that might help a bit with their dive bombing in the water. But what amazes me is their beak. If you imagine my hand is like their beak, they've got all these ribs or ridges on the beak. And I've seen kingfishers holding a very wet and slimy fish. Have you ever held a wet and slimy fish? It just wriggles out of your hands and falls off. And they're able to hold it in their beak, turn it around, and then lift it up and swallow it down. It's quite incredible to see. So we're going to stay here. We're going to continue on maybe in a moment once this kingfisher is left. And while we do so, I'm going to go over to my good friend Scott, who is on foot in the African bush.
Hello everyone, and a special welcome to the schools who are joining us to be on foot in Africa. Now, being on foot is a lot different to being in the vehicle, like you've seen with Steve and Jamie and James. So we need to be quite cautious. I've got a bag filled with campfire ash that helps me to test the wind. And the reason why we do need to be more cautious on foot is because the animals can be quite scared by us, and because they don't hear us coming a lot of the time, because we're quite quiet, we can give them a surprise. Now, my name's Scott. I'm teamed up with VM on camera, and we're slowly working our way through this area, hoping that we're going to be able to find a leopard. We had tracks in this area this morning, and we're going to continue to search and try and find any more of her tracks, which will hopefully lead us to her. So exciting stuff, and it's important to realize that a lot of the animals that we do find out here are found on foot by the expert trackers, and we do have an expert tracker with us on the walk. He's just checking a different area now, not far from us, and it's incredible what skills these trackers have. To be able to follow the footprints of animals like lion and leopard through this bush is certainly not easy. And Sophia, you'd like to know, what is the most dangerous animal in Africa? Well, the mosquito is, really, because of the malaria that it can give to a lot of people. But in terms of the mammals and in terms of the animals we need to be careful of on a bushwalk, mainly the herbivores, interestingly. Elephants, buffalo, and hippopotamus are three of the most dangerous large animals that we get here. And interestingly, we'll find a lot of the time the big cats like the lions and the leopards and the cheetahs will run away from us when we find them on foot. They don't want to have any fights with us. They don't see us as their food. And it's usually mothers with small cubs that will feel the need to attack us. So those are the most common causes of predator attacks, when mothers are trying to defend their tiny little cubs, which you can't blame them for. And again, interestingly, it's the herbivores like the elephants that don't even eat us that do like to squash us if we get in their way. Oh, now this is interesting. There's an impala that we've just seen here, and you'll notice that their behavior is quite a lot different to when we're looking at them in the vehicles. They're moving away. They don't feel as safe as they do when we are in a vehicle. Very good. Well, it was wonderful to have you on the bushwalk for a short little period. We're going to hopefully find you this leopard before you guys end the safari. In the meantime, we're going to send you off to one of the other guides.
This is a wonderful way to finish off for the kids joining us today. Thank you so much. It's been very, very special. Now, one of the things that you learn when you work out here in the wilderness is that sometimes it's a really good idea to be patient. So even when the animals are sort of asleep, you never know how the situation is going to change, and you see the best stuff if you are a little bit patient, if you just wait to see what happens. Now you can see all of the mongoose have looked up all of a sudden. Now they've relaxed again. They have to be very, very, very observant when you're this small. They constantly have to look for potential predators. Now, Danny Lynn, no, we never feed the wild animals. So feeding wild animals is a really bad idea, and I'll tell you why. Because then they come to learn, just like anything, that human beings mean food, and that can make them really dangerous. Even a small animal like a mongoose can bite very painfully. So they stop behaving in their natural way, and they change the way that they act because human beings have fed them, and that's a really bad thing. So we're lucky that there are still these magic protected areas where animals can live like they should, like nature intended them to. And we don't want to interfere with that. So we don't want to change the way that they behave. And if we did, we'd basically be making pets out of them, and you can't make a wild animal a pet. It's not only is it not a good thing to do, it's not very fair, but it's also very dangerous. What is the best thing to do is to sit and observe them in their natural habitat in the way that we've been doing. Thank you so much, kids. I hear that you have to go and carry on with your school day. I look forward to having you back on our safari again in the not too distant future, but it's been a pleasure, and thanks for the great questions. For all the rest of you, we're going to send you across to Steve, who is looking at a... Never mind. No, we're not going anywhere, which is great because I love having the schools, but this is a really spectacular sighting, and I'm sure many of you have perhaps thought of some questions that you wanted to ask. Well, now's your opportunity. Hashtag Safari Live on Twitter is how you can get hold of us, or in the comments section of whatever platform you happen to be watching on. I would love to answer your questions about this. So special. So what I'm going to do, and I'm really going to do this, is I'm going to sit here for just a little bit longer before I leave. While I play patience with the Mongoose family, it sounds as though Ralph has finally decided to leave his lazy lions. Let's go and see where he's going next.
Thanks, Jamie. Yes, well, we thought we need to get out a little bit and see what else we can find. We're not going too far, and obviously we've already seen a lot of elephants down here towards the swampy area, and there's lots of vehicles up ahead, so maybe there's something special that they've stopped for. So we'll go and investigate, see what they're all stopped and watching. But I'm sure those lions are still going to be there on our way back, so we'll always pop in and see if they're a little bit more active by that stage, a little bit later on in the drive. But we have spent some very good time with them, and it's been a wonderful experience. Just being next to those lions, sleeping in the shade and climbing up and climbing out of that shepherd's tree. But as per usual, we've got all the usual suspects down here in the swampy area. And so we're just coming up now. There's quite a few elephants here in front. But as I said, I wanted to see exactly what those vehicles have stopped for. I wonder if it has been for the elephants, which it might well be. But normally when there's a few vehicles, it generally means that there's possibly some lions. But as we make our approach there and find a nice position, let's head you on over to Jamie with those small little stripy critters.
I can't tear myself away from the small little stripy critters. Okay, I will. I promise. After this, I'm going to have to tear myself away. I've actually been waiting for the little ones to finish suckling, and given that everyone's standing on them, I imagine that might happen relatively soon. You can see, you get a really nice idea of the hierarchy here, with the high-ranking female, the one with the babies, and then you can actually see that the babies are being groomed by the rest of the group as well. So a lot of them gathered around the mother. They gave her her fur a good comb, and they've now actually moved on to the little ones. So this whole business of banded mongoose devoted to this next generation, these tiny, tiny little creatures, totally defenseless and for the moment entirely dependent on them. Janet, good question. Now, Janet's wondering about how old I think these mongooses are. Now, I confess that I'm actually not sure I'm not as I suppose, certain of my exact numbers where it comes to banded mongoose. I know that at around about 4 weeks old, a dwarf mongoose baby will come out of the burrow for the first time and sort of start to wander about, not with the rest of the group when they go hunting, but essentially, come out every now and again. These things to me look really tiny, just starting to get to their stripes. I don't know how old they are. I'm going to say around about 4 or 5 weeks old, if I had to guess. Now, there's something I must add. I think she's a high-ranking female, but she won't be the only one that has babies. So it's not as strict as a dwarf mongoose hierarchy, and other females do still give birth within this group. In this particular case, though, she is the only mother of this of these little ones. Okay, I'm going to tear myself away. Rolf has managed to find a nice view of his ellies. Let's go and join him.
Yes, and well, we've been seeing a lot of youngsters today, from the very young lions now over to some very young elephants. And I love watching baby elephants because, especially when they're still trying to work out how to use their trunk. As this one is, it seems like he's got a little bit of use for it, but it's still a little bit like that hose pipe under pressure, swaying and going all over the place. Nice different age groups of elephants here. The one in the back being an adult, this the medium-sized one being a young teenager. It's probably about 10, maybe a little bit less. It's quite young, but then that little one there, probably just over a year or so, maybe a year and a half. So nice to see different age groups. And the one in the front there, I think, is having a little suckle from Mummy as she continues grazing, feeding mostly on the Tomida triandra, or the red oat grass. And once again, very nice to see how cool it is by the amount of ear flapping going on with the elephants. Not too much at the moment, so it's cooled off very nicely, and there's quite a nice breeze coming through as well. So the hotter it is, the more you'll see them wafting those ears backwards and forwards, getting the cool air going over a lot of their blood that they pump through the ear flaps. It's a perfect radiator system that the elephants have. And that white dot in the corner of the eye, we've spoken about it as well. That's almost like a little bit of sleep. When you have a lot of build up in your eye from the environment, and at the moment the elephants, obviously with the grass that they're moving through, there is a lot of pollen with the flowering grass, and so they're obviously getting a lot of that in their eyes, and that's why you see that sort of foamy little dots on the inside there. It's obviously just their natural way of keeping them clean. As the egrets fly over, they've all been following the buffalo and the elephants around, and so this is the time of day when they can start making their way back to their roosting site for the evening, because it's not too long and the sun's going to start dipping over the horizon and over the Olololo escarpment. Probably got about another hour or so before it does that. So sometimes egrets can actually travel long distances to their foraging sites and then return obviously the same distance all the way back to their nesting or roosting sites, and it's normally over or next to water, as I'm sure you've seen at Chitwa Dam back in South Africa. That's quite the usual kind of nesting places for egrets, on, over or near to water, right next to it, and it does attract a lot of fish that normally wait underneath their nests in the hope that a little chick will fall in. The sharp-toothed catfish is a favorite of doing that. We've got some other people that are also enjoying the view of the elephants, and I think from here we're going to continue on. I want to go and poke my nose through the thickets and once again see if there's any chance of seeing a leopard. Jean-Andre still hasn't seen a leopard here in the Mara, so we'll see if we can get lucky just for him. I've been here for a reasonably short amount of time, and I've managed to see 2, so I consider myself very lucky, because I've said it many times, but it needs to be said, 4 years guiding before I saw my first leopard in the wild. Right, as I continue on and try to find those black rhino, let's head you on down south to Steve, who I'm not quite sure what he has, but I'm sure it's something exciting.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have just gotten off the vehicle to talk about a wonderful tree. I wonder if any of you out there can guess it. It is a wonderful tree. I've been looking quite hard this afternoon for them, and this is number 3 that I found. And this is actually the biggest one that I've seen. We're not in the best position for you to see it very, very well. I think I can get a leaf here. No, I can't. And I'm impossible to climb. We might have to find another one for you shortly. But what we do know about this tree, which is the apple leaf, so if you guessed it correct, very, very well done to you. And what we do know about the apple leaf tree is that it is always a good indicator of water. And where we find them growing, if you ever are wanting to pay for someone to come and do some drilling for a borehole or a pump, I guarantee you they're going to overcharge you. They're going to charge you for 3 or 4 drilling sites. And then when they finally found one, they're going to have drilled next to an apple leaf and say, "Eureka, we found your water." So you should preempt that and know that these trees indicate a high water table. Okay, if you find one of these with no leaves, then the water table's probably gone because it's dead. Okay, so don't drill there, as a good point. And here we have a little pan. It's not permanent water right now, but it's a very good indicator that there's water probably a couple meters below the ground here. It's difficult to say, but apple leaves are a very good indicator for that. And very nice tree, also known as the rain tree. It's a very good association with a bug called the hopper spittle bug. And they actually live in quite large accumulations on these plants, and they actually excrete a sap or a liquid that comes out of them, and it drips on the floor. So a lot of people think it's actually raining, but in fact it's just the excess secretions from the spittle bug that are spitting down on the floor. So it's not rain, in fact, at all. In Botswana, I know that they like to make makoros, which is like a dug-out canoe out of these. In Botswana, so the Tswanas, they will do that. But then in Shangaan culture, it is actually bad luck to cut down one of these trees. So just be careful on who you offer the apple leaf makoro for when you are sailing down the stream. Okay, so I'm going to come back to the car. Wonderful day we're having. I believe we've had a few technical issues with coming to Djuma, but we apologize for that. Davy and I have been out. We have been searching all the water points, looking for a wonderful apple leaf tree, which we finally found. And there's been nothing going on at the water points, nothing of interest anyway. Some elephants that crossed south of our boundary. And failing us not finding any animals, we thought afterwards, when it cooled down a little bit more, we'll make our way into the area of Thandi and her little bundle of joy, see if we can find a few this afternoon. Okay, just going to back out of here. So all the water points you've seen are very, very quiet. We were hoping to find some ellies at least at one of these water points, but a man who I do know has found some elephants. We're going to go back up to the Mara, and Mr. Ralph Kirsten has some elephants.
Thanks, Steve. And yes, everyone, we're still with this little family group of elephants. And look at these youngsters. They're getting up to all sorts here, pushing their tusks. I think there's a little bit of a tusk starting to grow there on this one, pushing it into the mud. And so that's normally around 2 years of age. If I did see little spiky tusks there, that's normally a good indication of surpassing the 2 years of age. And at least all of these youngsters have still got all their tails. They're still trying to work out the mystery of the missing elephants' tails, but these ones aren't going to be giving us any clues because they're all intact, which is a good thing, I suppose, but it doesn't help us with our mystery. I've had a very happy little group, and there's lovely light coming through at the moment. It is just a little bit cloudy, and so we are in a very similar area, so I'm going to head you on over to Jamie, who's got a little bit of a different angle of the exact same animals.
We are very much in the same area in that we are both looking at the same herd of elephants, and somehow Ralph and I have managed to encounter each other on our way, well, in opposite directions actually. And I was going to say something, oh yes, I know what it was. I was going to say, well, you know, a day without elephants is a day wasted, and today has definitely not been wasted. Also, I told you I was going to steal that. Little ones having a bit of a game here. A very similar scene to the one that we encountered earlier. Nice collection of ages there. Now, Dale, you want to know what the ridge on the back of elephants is for. In terms of for, it's not really for anything. It's the spine. It is the way in which the vertebrae are structured. And if you ever look at an elephant's vertebra, and it's unusual for us to have the opportunity to do that, but if you ever have a look at an elephant's vertebra, cute. Stop distracting me with your cuteness. We're talking about spines and things. They have the extensions of the vertebra where the muscles attach and the tendons attach are very, very extended in elephants. And so you get that ridge up along their backs. And that, of course, is because they're massive animals. So having a large area of attachment is of great advantage to them. Massively powerful muscles, huge skeletons. So that's all that ridge is. You can usually tell whether or not an elephant is healthy by the degree to which the spine protrudes. It protrudes naturally, but when you start to see the outline of the dip towards the ribs, then you know that an elephant is really very, very hungry. Fortunately, that's not something that we really see here. We did see it a little bit with the elephants during the drought 2 years ago on Djuma, and throughout the whole of the sort of northwest corner of South Africa, we really struggled in terms of rain. It was utterly tragic watching the impact that it had. Bye, Rolf. Can just see him driving past in the background there. How stunning is this? You know what you can't really capture? Well, you can actually, I suppose our cameras do, is the pastel colours of the Mara in the evenings. Anyway, that was a random aside. Let's go back and join Scotty D, who is out on foot. Let's see what he's found for you now.
Yes, we are still on foot, still searching for any sign of Tundi, and we're hoping we are going to get lucky. And it's important to realize that it's going to become a lot more tricky to track down Tundi and her cub in the coming weeks and months. The reason being is, unlike the last few days where she's been kind of camping out in one area where she brought a kill back to the cub, you'll probably find she's going to start doing the opposite. She's going to start making kills, going and collecting the cub and bringing the cub back to those kills, which means she could be anywhere really at any point in time. So we even feel, or at least I even feel, that could be the case as of now. So we're just working this area very slowly, where we did have some of her tracks this morning, in the hope that we'll find some further tracks, and ideally maybe even her with a kill. Now, I'm not too sure when last she was actually found on foot with the cub. She's definitely not going to be as cautious and as protective as she was a few weeks ago when the cub was a little newborn. Naturally, her kind of maternal instinct and protective nature over this cub is going to subside as it becomes older and as she becomes more kind of used to us being in that area. But I don't know when last she was found on foot with that cub, but it'll be interesting to see her reaction to us when that happens. But we certainly are going to exercise caution. What's interesting is that this very tree behind us that we're going to show you now, it's a knobthorn acacia. I remember having a wonderful, wonderful sighting with Tundi's mother, Kruger, lying up on this very, very branch over here. The sun's going to make it a little bit tricky for Vian. But this branch directly ahead of me, kind of going out that way, is where Kruger was lying up one day a couple of years ago. And it's one of my favorite things about spending time back on Djuma, is that there's so many memories of wonderful sightings that we've had with you guys all around this property. And we certainly are building up a bank of useful information and useful kind of history on the local animals. I've just been breaking these thorny branches out of the way so that they don't snag Liam. This is the branches of a knob thorn tree, and you can see it's got quite vicious hooked thorns, 2 of each at each nodule, and you don't want to be strung up on one of these. Very good. We're going to continue our search for Tundi, hopefully find her so that Steve can make his way in with the vehicle a little bit later, but for now it sounds like he's got some other plans that he...
Hello everybody, I'm just searching around.
Okay. All right, everybody, sorry about that. I don't know what happened there, but we have those little gremlins around sometimes. But nonetheless, we are chancing our luck coming through this area because we have a very good chance of getting stuck. But oh well, that's the chances we take. And if you don't risk anything, you don't get rewarded, do you? So we do need to try our luck and see what happens. I'm hoping that with the risk we're going to spot something like a black rhino or a leopard as we struggle on through the mud here. And sorry if the vehicle sounds a little bit loud, it's just that I'm keeping the revs up. Dale, you want to know if there's a reason why the animals in the Mara are not microchipped? Well, Dale, I think first and foremost, the idea is to keep it as wild as possible. And another side to it, obviously, is if we microchip animals, and I think the first animals that would be microchipped would be the rhino, which would make it a lot easier for them to establish where they are and what's going on with them for anti-poaching. The thing is, because that information can also land up in the wrong hands. And not just by the people passing it on to them. You know, IT people or computer boffins, they have some weird and wonderful ways of being able to access information that is shared online. So even if it had to be encrypted or whatever, the coding and so on for the feed of these microchipped animals, that where they would be able to see where they are, if they had a satellite signal, etc., it would also then make it available to people that would want to find them for dubious reasons. But just in terms of plain microchipping, there have been some rhino in all parts of Africa that are microchipped or barcoded, that they can later be scanned because they try to just ascertain, especially once an animal has been poached, where that horn lands up, because they're trying to see the actual trade routes, because they're not trying to actually catch the poacher on the ground, because he's the end of the line and he's the one that is actually really desperate, getting paid very little to go and risk his own life, taking the life, yes, of a rhino, but he's not the real problem. He's just the end of the sort of problem line. It's the kingpins and the real sort of drug lords, if I may say, at the top of it, that they're trying to catch at the end of the day. So they microchip and they try to see if they seize rhino horn, etc., wherever around the world, at least they would have had a database of where that horn had come from, and then they can try and see the routes that it has then taken. But it would be quite expensive to microchip all the animals around, so they would only do it with very important animals like the very vulnerable rhino. And so there can be a little bit of that, but it's also quite expensive, and you don't want to be putting rhino or any other of the animals at risk with the anesthetic that is used, it can very easily affect them and their health, and you can have quite a large number of animals dying as a result of the stress that is accompanied by putting animals out, even to sleep with anesthetic and so on. They don't handle it quite as well as we do as humans, I think, because they really don't know what's happening. So that's a wonderful topic, and let's keep the conversation going. Let's head you on over to Jamie and see what she thinks about that.
I mean, it depends on what you're using the microchip for, I suppose. A lot of rhino horns are microchipped in order for... Unfortunately, those microchips are there in the event that rhino is killed and their horn is taken. And it is a way of helping to track down if that is tracked down, and if that rhino horn is found, it then allows them to connect back to the reserve that the rhino was poached from and fully investigate it. And of course that doesn't harm the rhino. They drill a hole in, put the chip in, and they plaster it up solidly. It's completely it's like cutting your own fingernails. Obviously not right down to the quick. So I guess it does depend, but I agree with Rolf completely. There are certain things that are very invasive. Collaring, microchipping, putting transmitters in abdomens, all of those sorts of things, very, very invasive and quite risky for the animal's health. And I think it must only be done where the rewards or the reason behind it outweighs the risks or the damage done. Okay, we're going to try and send you back across to Djuma. They've been really battling with the gremlins this afternoon, and poor Steve has been waiting forever to show you his tree.
Thank you, Jamie. And we have moved slightly, and hopefully we've got better signal this time. So folks, forgive me if this has happened before, if you have done this before, but bear with me. I'd like to try something with you with the apple leaf. So all of those of you watching, if you wouldn't mind just closing your eyes and turning up your volume just a little bit. Maybe turn the volume up a little bit before you close your eyes. Are we all ready? Have a listen. Tell me what this sounds like to you. I wonder if anybody got that. I'll do another one. I think that's coming through nicely, FC. No comment. Fantastic. Did you all get that? What did that sound like to you? Indeed. It sounded like an apple, didn't it? If you've heard that before, I apologize, but apparently that is one of the reasons why it's called an apple leaf. Now, I'm going to show you the leaf of this tree. And I spoke yesterday briefly about leaves, and this entire piece from here to there is the leaf. Leaflet, leaflet, and leaflet, with this piece over here, right at the base there, being the auxiliary bud. That is what makes that a leaf. Okay, so very easy to identify. If you look in between the leaflet here, there is no auxiliary bud there, which makes this a compound leaf. If I pull that off, compound leaves tear off at the base like that. So apple leaves, they have access to water, have very large leaves. Why would you have lots of leaves or large leaves? It's all about the pump system. If you have a borehole and you want to pump water through you, or you're getting a lot of water, you need to be able to pump it out. And having a large leaf enables a lot of wind to blow over the leaf, which allows a lot of water to be pumped through, which allows a lot of nutrients to come up into the plant. So plants that have access to a lot of water generally have very large leaves. They are very pretty leaves, Linda. I agree with you. So it's got 3, 1, 2, and 3. Some people call this trifoliate, but it is a compound leaf. 1, 2, 3. And what is interesting is if you take the branches of this tree and you cut them and you throw them into a little pond. This is not something that we should do nowadays, but what people did back in the day, hunter-gatherers, probably not even that long ago, probably 40, 50 years ago in areas like this, locals would have cut these branches, just like I've done here, a number of these branches, and throw them into the water, and they actually have a compound in them called rotenin, which poisons or burns the fish's gills. and the fish all can't breathe. They swim up to, or they float up to the surface, and you can harvest them out. And there's no adverse effects to people after eating that. But it's obviously not a very sustainable way of fishing. But if you're hungry, it's a good thing to note. Much easier than sticking your hand in and trying to do what these hillbilly fish catchers do. What's that program called where they stick their hand down? I'm not a big fan of that sort of thing. But Rotanon, and the roots are very interesting because you can actually take the roots, which is also not sustainable, but if you dig the roots up and scrape off the bark, you can actually use it to treat snake bites and all sorts of stomach ailments. So wonderful, wonderful tree. Bad luck for some, boats for others, snake bites for others, and a good fishing tool. We're going to throw that away. I'm going to keep this because it is so pretty. And we are going to continue on. And while we do so, we're in the area where Tundi is normally. We're going to see what we can do. And while we do that, Mr. James Henry, I believe, is still with Nkuhumas.
Here we are with the Nkuhuma Pride, everybody. We've had some pretty dodgy signal in this area. And anyway, the Pride, as you can see, is doing a huge amount of not a lot. Now, in case you missed it, please do talk to us using the hashtag Safari Live on Twitter. Otherwise, you can chat to us using the YouTube chat stream. It would be marvellous to hear from you. At least there is a little bit of action at these lions. My telephone thinks I want to ask it a question, which I most assuredly do not. Anyway, this is the full Nkuhuma Pride, and I haven't seen them for a very, very long time. And also just to remind you, of course, that it is in fact Sebastian Rombi's birthday today. Happy birthday, Sebastian. 36 years of him. Can you believe it? On the back of this car. Doesn't look a day older than 18.
Yeah, thank you.
We're getting many happy birthdays from the final control room, which is very nice. I think they all look pretty well fed, actually. Of course, two of them selfishly devoured a zebra the other day with the littlest cub. And I've failed thus far to see the second little cub. There's the first one there, trying to still get a bit of milk. Probably pushing the age where milk is not really so much a good idea anymore. But I think that the other little one, and as far as I'm aware there were two, she's died. Scarlett, interestingly they don't, and I really like this question because I think it's quite an important one. You say, do lions have a strong smell? Scarlett, they don't have a strong smell. In fact, none of the big cats that I've spent any time with have a strong smell at all. Hyenas can smell pretty rank at times. Wild dogs absolutely hum. But lions don't, and nor do leopards, and nor do cheetah. Now, you will read in some fairly unreferenced sort of guiding textbooks, if you like, that lions will hunt into the wind. I have yet to see that, and in much more reliable texts that are actually based on data, they make mention of the fact that lions very seldom actually seem to take heed of the wind when they go hunting. Now, the two subjects are interlinked, because what I think they mean is that lions and leopards and cheetahs spend such a long time cleaning themselves, I think, to negate the smell on their bodies. Hyenas and wild dogs, which have a completely different hunting strategy, do not. Wild dogs are coursing predators. They walk through or trot through the woodlands or through the grasslands until they spot prey, and then they just give chase. There's no stealth involved in it. Lions, on the other hand, and leopards, will move through the woodlands, and they're ambush predators. So they do their level best to try and stay undetected. And I think one of the very clever ways that they do that is to clean themselves fastidiously, and in so doing reduce the amount of smell that they have. As far as cheetah go, I haven't spent a huge amount of time with cheetah, so I'm not really sure if they have a very strong smell. I do know that they clean themselves fairly fastidiously as well. Now, obviously that has benefits for disease as well, but it definitely makes a difference, I think, to the amount of smell that they have. Now, somebody who has got a tremendous sense of smell, and combined with his tremendous fashion sense always smells good, is Scott Dyson.
Wow, I'm not convinced about either of those 2 points, James, but thank you, I will claim it. Smells okay. I'm sure you're having a good time with James and the Nkuhumas. We are trying desperately to try and find another big cat for you this afternoon in the hopes that it would be Tundi, a female leopard. Treehouse waterhole is just behind us. We've just scoured the waterhole for any tracks of hers. We didn't come up with anything, but her last tracks were definitely heading in this direction. So now we're just going to kind of backtrack through the bush slowly. Maybe we'll bump into her with a kill along the way. There's also quite a lot of fresh elephant sign around, and it's one of the most important things to remember when on foot in Africa, and that is to not lose focus. When you're trying to find one animal, you can become so encompassed in that specific creature that you forget that there's other animals around you, which is obviously dangerous. So also keeping an eye out for any ellies. There haven't been many buffalo around on Djuma recently, but they also could pop up at any time, and just because we haven't seen any doesn't mean we shouldn't exercise caution in case we do bump into one of them. Sadly, not many insects around at the moment, and that's due to the lack of rainfall. I mean, even if we just look down here at this grass, it's not nearly as green and lush as it should be at this time of the year. And I'm hoping Mother Nature has got a trick up her sleeve and that she's planning to deliver a whole bunch of rain down to Djuma in the coming weeks, because it really, really is far drier than it should be at this time of the year. Loving being back on foot though. It's been a couple of weeks since I've been able to explore this incredible place on foot, and loving having Herbie around. He's an incredible wealth of knowledge and just simply a lot of good fun to be around. So loving being back on foot, and hopefully we're going to get lucky a little bit later on. For now, though, we're going to be sending you back up to the Mara with Ralph.
Thanks, Scott. And yes, well, it would have been rude of us not to pop in and see what the lions were up to, the Angama Olololo Pride. And here we are, sitting at eye level with a couple of the youngsters, and it's lovely colours and light at the moment, with that sun just above the Olololo escarpment, about to disappear over there. But at the moment, it's still a little bit of alertness around these youngsters. Well, as I say that, the one flops down, and so does the second one. So we're left with one with his head up and looking around. But what a wonderful sighting this has been. We've spent a lot of time here today, but it's all been with good reason, because we had a couple of lions up the tree, and that was very nice to see. And with the whole family here, it just makes for a beautiful sighting as they all start to go flat. Now, liquid core, you want to know how much food does it take to feed the entire pride? Well, we pretty much worked it out because we saw the other night the area where they had killed some zebra, but they killed and ate and finished 2 complete zebra. So I would say that that's probably the amount that they need to fill this entire group up nice and full. So it's pretty much the amount of 2 zebra, which is not a small amount of meat, I can promise you that. It's like one of the biggest donkeys that you've seen. That's the size of a zebra, and as one of my good friends told me just recently, zebra are donkeys with a little bit of an identity crisis. But these lions have obviously fed nicely last night on I don't know what, but they've got very nice fat bellies, all of them, and they're all now probably good to go for the next 2 or 3 days or so. And so we probably won't see much action out of them, much activity. There's going to be a whole lot of what lions do best, lying around and sleeping. Giacomo, you're wondering what is the very large insect in the background, or is it a bird? Giacomo, it's a bird, and it does sound like one of our little scrub robins, because he's starting to make a very nice little tune. So he's calling here in the grass, but I can't see him. I can just hear him, and it does sound very much like a robin. It's also quite windy. But yes, so there's not much noise coming from the lions. The birds are doing their calls and everybody's starting to make a bit of noise. We've got some lapwings out here in front, and this storm, everybody, that you would have seen there a little bit behind the lapwings. Those are wattled lapwings. You can see those little wattles that they have just at the base of the bill. That's what gives them their names. But once again, we've also got a very fast approaching heavy storm. The horizon over towards the Mara River and towards the Olololo Gate is absolutely dark and gloomy off there. It's obviously raining off in the distance already, and it's pretty identical to yesterday. And we had a very big cloud burst up in camp just shortly after we made it up the hill after the show. And so the clouds and heavens opened and really gave us a proper dousing this morning. So that's why we're not really accessing too much of the swampy area. But speaking of the storm and how wonderful looking it is, but how ominous it is, let's head you on over to Jamie, who I think has got a different but similar picture to us.
We do indeed. We've gone, well, actually, to be completely 100% honest with you, I'm looking at the storm approaching, and Adrian and I have started quite literally running for the hills, or at least driving very fast, to try and get back to the camp before this storm hits us. Fortunately, it doesn't seem to be traveling too fast, but I might regret that. We've still got another, from the base of the hill, it takes us around about 20 minutes to get back into the camp and get our covers down. Not a disaster, of course, if we get caught. It's just slightly better off, slightly easier for us if we manage to make it to the safety of the camp first. So once again, talking about the colours of the Mara evening and the pastels. It's a very pastel place, I've decided. Although you do get the really vivid electric green. But it is quite a soft, a lot of the time the lighting is quite soft. I don't know how to describe it, it's almost gentle colours. And now we've got a rainbow as well. Rainbows are notoriously difficult to capture on camera. I don't know, it just doesn't quite, it never quite fully conveys just how gorgeous they are. But there we go. And it's a rainbow without an end. So we could pretty much guess whatever's at the end of it. It fades out before it touches the Mara floor. Our personal pot of gold. Golden grass. I'm starting to sort of think I'm feeling a raindrop or two. And the wind is now starting to howl. And the conditions really have changed completely. Well, it was a really absolutely wonderful afternoon. We should do that again sometime. You think, Adrian? I think we should. It's time for the Mara team to race away from the storm. We're going to say farewell and good evening to you. Enjoy the rest of your safari with our crew back in South Africa. Off you go to Steve, who is enjoying a bird, I think.
Yes, thank you, Jamie. We rush home from that storm. Don't get wet. We will enjoy the sunshine here. Keep things going. Folks, looks like we have found an eagle who is very hot. You can see by the beak. And I'm thinking, I wonder if there's any other bird experts out there, but I'm going to go with a less spotted eagle on this one. You can see how narrow the legs are. The feathers go all the way to the feet. But the legs are very, very narrow, almost like it's wearing very tight socks or stockings. There's a little white patch on the outside of the wing that we could see when it turned round. So there's only a bird I know of that is of this size with the very narrow legs. But if there's anyone else out there that disagrees with me, feel free to send your comments through. But here's a non-breeding Palearctic migrant, so it comes from far north. And it is obviously present from October until about March. And it enjoys these very nice woodlands. Competes with the other eagles in its food, but feeds on a lot of termites, which adds to its diet. but obviously frogs and rodents, and even will attack birds in their nests, taking the nestings. Quite an accomplished eagle, but really, really small. Very similar in size to... I'm not sure if he's cooling down by opening those wings. Normally a vulture does that with its wings to sun them, to clean any parasites. So it's possible that this individual was near water at some point, had a little bit of a bath, and obviously got wet in the armpit area there, and is now opening to try and dry themselves. Dances with dirt, commenting, what a great looking bird. It is indeed. It is a beautiful bird. And it was just hidden in the bushes here, and as we drove past it flushed itself out and has made itself very conspicuous now for us, which is amazing. Hope you're all taking some nice screenshots there, so that when I do get home later I can check that on Twitter and double check that I've identified this correctly, but I'm almost certain there's a lesser spotted eagle. Jojo is saying steppe eagle. It is quite similar to the steppe eagle, but the beak on this one is quite small. The steppe eagle's got a bit of a stronger beak, but they are quite similar. And it's definitely something to pay attention to. I'll actually look. My app gives me a nice option to compare them side by side. So I'm going to have another quick look here. See what we come up with. Yeah, now the steppe eagle, the legs definitely, if I put this on the dashboard here, you can't compare with the legs. The legs are very, very, like he's wearing pantaloons, the old type of pants they used to wear. The legs on the lesser spotted are very narrow. People call stovepipe legs. So that would be one of the easiest ways to confuse them. And they say here that the steppe has got brown eyes, and the gape, which is the mouth, actually extends behind the eye. And the lesser spotted with this one is apparently going to have palish eyes. So let's have another look at his eyes, shall we, Darby? Let's have a look. But the legs are a dead giveaway. And there's a little bit of pale under the wing there as well. The underwing covert's a little bit paler. You can see the base there where the wings are just above the foot. You can see the wing there on the left of the screen. It's quite pale there. You don't get that in the steppe eagle. That is quite broad. And the eyes don't look very pale to me here, but it is the light as well. Monique London says its wings look like haunches. It does. He is really sitting in a very strange position, but as I think, I'm pretty sure it's quite wet under there, and it's just opening them up to try and dry themselves before the evening comes. These birds don't want to sit with wet feathers when the time comes. He's comfortably warm, but he's doing it, or she's doing it, to allow for the wings to dry. That's all I can assume. I'm not too sure, because I didn't see what it was doing before. But what a wonderful specimen. But do you all see what I mean by the legs? The legs are very narrow, and before, when we saw it, before it turned around, the legs were very, very narrow from the side. Thank you very much, Nick. Nick is agreeing with me. Wonderful, folks. Well, we are still on our lookout. We've checked Tundi's old den site, and there's no sign of her there. But I do believe Scott Dyson has been on some tracks, and it's apparent that she's moved away from that area. So we thought we might just give it another check, see what we can see. We never know what can come up in the afternoon as things start to cool down. But we're going to continue now. We are off-road a little bit, so we're going to continue off through the bushes here to get back to the road. Soon on the Reddit to see what he recommends. Our best approach would be to possibly find that beautiful cat. There's that time of day when it's starting to cool down a bit that you hope to have them just pop out for you. That's always nice. And the lighting as well. As you've noticed, the last few days spending with Tundi in the afternoon is probably far nicer than that sort of late morning. No, she's definitely not here. And we have another apple leaf. The entire afternoon we were searching for them, and as soon as we stopped talking about that wonderful tree, they suddenly appear. That happened with me with the tree wisteria the other day. As soon as we spoke about it, it disappeared. Okay, so folks, we're going to go across to my friend Scott, who is on foot again with Herbie, and see what updates he might have for you.
Nothing major regarding updates. We're still trying to piece together the puzzle of where Thandi, this female leopard, is. Funny about Steve finding all the apple leaf trees now that he doesn't need them, and maybe we should tear a page out of his book and start looking for something else, and then maybe Thandi will pop up. So, there's just one track over here that I would like to show you guys. It's not very easy to see, but when tracking, you've got to kind of make the most of whatever's given to you, and at this stage of the game, if we look at these three lobes, they're quite distinctive of the back pad, and even if you can't really see the toes too clearly, you can see two of these kind of right toes, okay, but the two on the left aren't easy to see. But even if we just scrape those out completely, just that over there is enough evidence to give us enough of an idea of what the animal is and which direction it is moving in. Now, what we're thinking of doing is actually kind of very slowly and cautiously backtracking these tracks, because that way we'll have a good idea of where she stashed the cub. She's not moving huge distances with the cub. We've got a feeling we know the area that she did stash it. It's an area where she has been using quite a bit over the last few weeks, and she was last seen heading towards there late yesterday evening. So we are hoping that she's using that same spot again, and as long as we kind of get to within 50 meters of that area and find the track still coming from there, then we'll have a good idea where we can tell Steve to go and check a little bit later on, because that's in all likelihood where the cub is, and it's in all likelihood where Thandi will return to. Lilu, you are absolutely 100% spot on with regards to tracking being incredibly good fun, being kind of like an animal detective trying to work out what's gone on, and often there is a crime scene involved. A murder case is often one of the best leads for us helping to find the predators on foot. I can assure you, if you ever get an opportunity to spend any time on foot in Africa, being it just going for a stroll or tracking animals, you should grab that opportunity, because it is absolutely exhilarating. Just seeing a little bit of movement up in a marula tree over there. Yeah, that's the one behind that, Vim, to the right. Yeah. Just need to double check it wasn't a leopard repositioning, but it doesn't look like it was obviously just some leaves blowing in the wind there. But a good spot to be checking is certainly up in the trees. Even yesterday afternoon we saw Thandi's little cub climb quite high up into a tree, which was good fun. It was the highest I've seen it up a tree, and what I said yesterday is that this is critically important that this cub is A, not scared of heights, and B, capable of climbing, because it is the cub's #1 escape route when other threats come onto the scene. Now, I've been carrying around a little bit of a good luck charm. I found a pile of about 5 of them, and it was probably an old kind of broken down elephant dung. That's why there was a whole bunch of them together. They're not very fresh. It would have been from last season probably. And what I did was I opened up one of the 2 capsules. There's 2 caps on each seed, which houses the delicious nuts. And I've made it quite easy to dislodge this one now because I've already taken it out. But this is the tricky part with getting to the nuts. Once you open that cap, the nut would ordinarily be in that hole, but because it's old, some other little bugs have gotten to that delicious seed before we have been able to. But I'm looking forward to rummaging through some fresh elephant dung and then getting us some nuts. It's kind of one of the best ways to do it. If kind of a month or 2 after the elephants have been feeding on the marulas, we can find that all of the flesh of the fruits has been eaten off, and then it allows us to get very easy removal of that little cap to get the nuts. Let's take care. You'd like to know what animals have asymmetric tracks. And I'm trying to think of one animal that kind of walks with both left legs will move forward at the same time, and then both right legs will move forward at the same time as a giraffe. That's kind of a unique movement of the giraffe. So not identical. A lot will depend on how quickly they're moving, and I'm not too sure actually how to answer that question. Take care. Rabbits have got an interesting one in that it creates an L shape with almost a kind of a dot here, a dot there, and a dot there. So there's kind of 3 points on a rabbit's track very often. But yeah, I'm not too sure how to answer your question, sadly. But I guess that would be an example of it. Look who we've bumped into. And as you can see, Steve's intentions were similar to ours, trying to work out where Thandi has gone. He's obviously just popped into the den site where we are guessing she may have of that. Steve? Yes, very good, thanks. No, we just and
check the old den site.
no way. There's still time, so we'll keep searching. We had such a good run with Tan and that cub. I think 4 or 5 days, both morning and afternoon drives. We got her, which was a real bonus, probably the best luck of luck with her. Work out where she goes as that cub gets bigger, because it'll Steve, good luck, guys.
Jump on board, Frank. Okay, just giving Scotty a quick message. We just got some instructions from Herbie to he's going to walk along the drainage line, so he'll meet you on the other side there. He's given us instructions. You don't have any, but fasten whatever you can. With one of the other guards live. I think the other day on Bushwalk we waved. So it's nice to have you all on board with us. What Scott was just saying is very, very relevant. I mean, what I've seen in the last week is just mind-blowing for me from a leopard and a cub perspective. And I think you folks at home have all been horribly spoilt. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but for us not to find her for an afternoon or two is perfectly normal. And we have had a whole lot of luck. So Herbie's asked us to go around onto Pangolin. We're going to be keeping our nose to the ground to see if we can find any tracks of her. She apparently moved back into the drainage line where she had the cub last week, and then they've been backtracking her tracks to where she probably might have left her again. She moved off somewhere to drink, so we did check all the water points further away, but Herbie's now asked us to check just the little pans just on the other side. And those of you who were with me last week when we got Thandi and cub drinking at a small pan with green water, that is not far from where we've just been, just on the other side of the drainage. So we're going to go check that as per Herbie's instructions, because he has a very good understanding of how these animals move. And I must admit, to my time as a guide, I basically used to talk a lot and give all the information, while my track on the front found us all the animals. So people gave me a lot of credit, but I always would give the credit directly forward, because I was just the mouth. I do have a fair bit of tracking skill, a bit of intuition, but guys like Herbie, they just do it all the time. Guide Monkey asks a very interesting question. Do animals use similar techniques to tracking as we do? No. We are the pivot. We are the evolved man. Boost human evolution into the next sort of evolutionary stage. I believe that, and I think it works quite nicely as a theory. No tracks here yet. So I apologize if we had a bit of breakup coming through the drainage line. I hope you didn't miss any of my amazing discussion. Feel free to send me a message on Twitter if you did, and I'll reply timelessly. So while we continue with Herbie's instructions to try and find some tracks of this beautiful cat for you folks, we're going to go back to James with the Nkuhuma pride.
Here we are with the Nkuhumas still. We remain. They, as you can see, are in a state of high anxiety. They hardly know where to look for all the excitement that they feel. You can see that the tension in the air here is palpable. Anything could happen at any stage. Look at them. Just poised for action. Surely about to leap up and savage something, some unsuspecting creature in the woodland here. That is obviously completely untrue, everybody. They are not likely to do anything at all whatsoever, at least I would say for the and if it passes off a path like this and goes off into the bush, you're really going to struggle to find it. Really, only experts like Herbert are going to be able to successfully track and follow and track a leopard. So if you're learning to track, Herbie will also tell you that rhino are difficult, and they are if you're going to find them regularly, because what they do is they go off towards a termite mound, they graze around the termite mound, up and down over their own tracks. It's very difficult to pick out a direction from that termite mound. But if you're learning tracks around a mud wallow, they're the most perfect things to learn with, because rhino drag their feet, they don't lift them up like elephants do, and they drop off bits of mud where they're going. And so if you're a novice, tracking a rhino can be tremendously satisfying at this time of the day, because quite often you'll find them just grazing and sort of moving towards the ridge crests, and so those would be the easiest ones to track. I did hear a wonderful story of a chap called Richard Sewella, who is a cantankerous fellow, absolutely phenomenal tracker. And he and the late great Wilson Masia, who was a very famous tracker here, once had a roaring argument about whether a particular scuff in the dirt, and I don't mean a full track here, I literally mean a scuff, was a monkey or a porcupine. And they had a huge argument about it, and so the chaps watching them said, listen, if you want to sort this argument out, follow it, see if you can find it. And they tracked a porcupine into its burrow for about 2 hours, and eventually Richard Sewella was proved correct. And I don't think he ever forgot that incident. Now, something like that would be almost impossible for someone like me to do, and even harder than trying to follow something like a leopard. But, the guys in this area have perfected the art of tracking leopards because, of course, ecotourism in the Sabi Sands in particular, and in some of the other reserves around here, has been largely built around the leopard. Up in the Mara, they've got the Great Migration, they've got the huge prides of lions and the massive clans, they've got the cheetah. But the one thing that they don't manage to see nearly as often as we do are the leopards. And in fact, it is the leopard, I think, that draws the most people down to the Sabi sands every single year. And so you can imagine how good the trackers around here have got at following leopards. Now, Monkey Farmer, you're wondering about aggression, and I'm going to give you the speech again. You've obviously not heard my speech, Monkey Farmer, and I apologize to those of you who have heard it before. You say, which species show the most aggression around us? I don't use the word aggression unless I absolutely have to, I mean in the wildlife context, I don't mean in the human context. The reason for that is that I do not believe that any animal is born by nature aggressive. Aggressive meaning something that will push home an attack for no apparent reason in an angry way, and especially towards human beings. I don't believe that any of the animals out here are naturally aggressive. I think they go about their lives, and if they need to be aggressive for protecting themselves, then that's exactly what they will do. And so when you say which animals are the most aggressive, a much better question is which animals are you likely to irritate to the extent that they will become aggressive? Which animals are most easily irritated to the point of aggression? And I suppose a buffalo bull could be considered something like that, and I suppose an elephant as well on foot could be considered something like that. A lioness with cubs would also be something fairly, potentially dangerous to track, and likewise a leopardess. I just saw a bird hopping around there. No, never mind, we won't see it with the camera. A leopardess with a cub could also be quite nasty. But the point is that animals, contrary to popular belief, are pretty predictable. And if you predict, or if you can put yourself in their place on seeing us, you can often predict what they're going to do. So, for example, if I'm tracking these lions, they see me, yes, even me at 5 feet and 8 inches, they see me as a threat, as a predator, as something that need to be afraid of. And so their response to me would normally be to get up. And if you are faced with a threat, most of the time, most of us, except for those of us with a small screw loose, will move away from that threat, because we don't, unless we're in a sort of testosterone-fueled rage, choose to engage every threat we mean, or every threat that we come across. And so what these animals do is move away, and if you get them to the point that they feel cornered, like they can't get away from you, then they will push home an attack. And it's exactly the same. You can imagine being set upon by an intruder in your kitchen, and left with no option. No matter how small or frail you are, you will eventually attack. And that's what animals do out here. Now, Dawn, you're saying, but why am I saying that the vegetarians are the most aggressive? Well, it's because the aggression is not based on hunger. It's, as I've been explaining, based on fear. They are fearful of us. And elephants and buffalo have a long, long history with human beings. They are bigger than any of these animals, of course. And so what that means is that their history with us has made them very afraid of us, tremendously afraid of us. They know that we have, I suppose over the years, used their flesh and their skin for our own purposes, and that's made them afraid of us. I don't mean because they think we're going to use them to make shoes, but because they have a history of us trying to knock them off. And so that's why they can be more aggressive, if you like, or more potentially dangerous. So aggressive and dangerous are two of the words I try to avoid when describing wildlife, because I don't believe that any animal is inherently dangerous or inherently aggressive. Of course there are exceptions, but most of the time you will find animals react in a relatively predictable fashion, in the same way that, probably more so than human beings do, and most of the time they are not dangerous. They are potentially dangerous. If you irritate them to the point of aggression, they will become dangerous. So that's my speech that everybody has to hear. I'm sorry about that for those of you who've heard my speech before. Now, Mandy, you're wondering about how many lions there are in the Nkuhuma pride here. You used the term clan. Clan, of course, would strictly use for hyena, but you'll find, Mandy, that lions really don't care if you call them a clan or a pride, so I'm going to let it go. You can call this the Nkuhuma clan. I quite like that, actually. So there are 5 lionesses in theory. There are 6 sub-adults. 6-year-old, no, not that many. Hang on, let me just check that. I have got it written down with me as we speak. I'm just going to quickly check, because I don't want to tell you a lie. I haven't seen them for so long. Let me just do a quick searchy. Come on, internet. I've got it written down on my phone. Anyway, 5 lionesses. At least 2 little, or there were 2 very little ones, and now I think there's only 1 of those left. And then by my reckoning, there should be 6 others. Here we go, I have it. No, not quite, almost. Here we go, now I've got it. Yeah, 6 sub-adults, and they were born between May and July last year. And then the 2 cubs born somewhere around, I think, about 3 months ago. There were also 2 cubs born in August, and so in theory there could be 5, 11, 13, 14, but I think we're missing 3 of those. I think there are 11 lions here. Anyway, this pride's gone from being a very small pride of 5 up to a fairly substantial pride now of 11. Thank you, Peyton, and many others, for saying that you enjoy it when I make my little speeches. That's very kind of you. I shall continue making them, but not too often. Sorry, before we go to Steve, look at that little cub coughing. Horrible. Anyway, while we try and figure out what's going on here, let's go across to Stivovo. I have no doubt he's got a tree to show you.
Thanks, James. I don't have a tree to show you. I have a drainage line. We were instructed by Herbie, we found him again, to come into this drainage line. He had very fresh tracks just somewhere over there, and he also heard some birds calling. Nyonis, he called it, which is often what we look for when we're looking for these cats. So without him going too much further into that area, we decided to come in with the vehicle, because as you know, Tony's quite relaxed with the car, but we didn't find anything. So I don't have a tree. Sorry, James. Yes, I wonder what is that little cub and its cough. I did notice that the other day. I wonder if anyone out there has any solutions. And what did James say? I didn't quite copy in my ear. But we're continuing on. I've let Herbie know that we had no luck here. And I haven't heard back from him. I think he might be still on the tracks. Still on the tracks of her. I did have my radio down for a minute, though. So I wonder. What an adventure it is, safari folks. Adventures under African skies is what we are doing right now. And you are still on the back seat. Caitlin. Why do you ask such questions? Caitlin asks, what would I do if I came across Tundi and cub on foot? Well, I personally would try not to let that happen. Leopard cub and mama, for me, is not something I want to encounter on foot at all. So what I would do is I wouldn't go into anywhere thick. I would skirt any area that's even remotely thick. I would skirt it by a big shot, and you've got to be so quiet. Every step you take is very quiet. And on this show, I think it might be quite tricky for me because I'm talking all the time. So that would eliminate any stealth approach I might have. And the reason for the stealth is not just because the animals hear your voice, it's so I can hear that, which if you've ever heard that before, I've heard it a few times in my life. It wasn't the cub, it was just the leopard itself. But that noise, it stops you dead in your tracks, and from that basically back away. If I would back away from that tree without looking directly at the tree. I'd kind of look a little bit left or right of the tree and just back away, but keeping my face facing this way, but without any eye contact, if I could see the leopard, that is. But often you don't see it, you just hear that noise, and quite often you don't hear the first rumble that they give you, but you always hear the second one, and if you don't, then you might not come out of that very well. So it's very important to have very good ears in this situation. So we are back on the road. That was an adventure. I hope that answers your question, Caitlin, but silence in the bush is very important. If you ever go on a bushwalk, the one thing I've always had to really hit home with the students I've trained on trails is they often don't pay attention. They always think that talking is just no talking. It's like, oh, it's fine, we can get away with it. But with me being in the front, if I'm on a trail with guests, and there's even the slightest bit of chatter at the back, it's very hard to concentrate on any potential noise that might be coming in front of you there. So silence is golden out here when it comes to walking, and also the noise. Human noise is very unnatural out here, and the sand bushmen, when they speak, if you've ever heard them, there's lots of clicks and claws, and it's a very sort of animal-like sound. So they can get away with communicating out here without any form of actual human language, as we would call it. But we're going to continue on, see if we can find any tracks, and while we do so, we're going to go back to Scott and Herbie, who I think might have an update for you.
Yeah, I guess Steve is right, although it does depend on what you're trying to achieve, really, because if you were to walk through the bush with a metal pot and a wooden spoon banging it, I'm almost certain that no animals would give you any trouble because they would flee before you got there. But of course, for what we're doing, and for anyone who's on a nature walk, you want to try and see the animals, hence trying to keep quiet so that you can get a view of them before they run off. But say hypothetically your plane crashed in Africa and you're stuck in the middle of a wilderness area, I would suggest not keeping quiet and making as much noise as possible, and then you'll scare everything away. So it's kind of a catch-22, because the reason we get ourselves into dangerous situations, or anyone does whilst on foot, is because we are keeping quiet, but of course that's so that we can see the animals, or at least hopefully get a glimpse of them. And importantly, we don't want to kind of ruin their day. We don't want them to all go running off into the distance when they hear our noise. Dawn, you would like to know, why are there so many dangerous animals in Africa? Good question. I guess because Africa's still got a lot of its wildlife areas intact, whereas a lot of other parts of the world don't. So most parts of the world did have dangerous animals all over before human beings kind of took over and chased them off. You know, there's bears in America. I guess a moose can also be kind of dangerous. Tigers in India and Russia. But yes, I think it's fair to say we do have a large amount of dangerous animals, and I think a lot of that is because there's so many big animals here, like elephant, buffalo, hippopotamus. It's just their size that allows them to be so dangerous towards us. But out of all the dangerous animals we could bump into here, we are far safer walking through the bush than we are walking through any city on the planet. Could get taken out by a stray bus for all we know. Very good. We're going to keep sneaking through this beautiful shady riverine area in the hope of finding anything interesting, and send you back to James in the meantime.
Well, we have not left, of course, the Nkuhumas. Here they remain, fast asleep, not doing a great deal. Oh, one of them's rolling over, everybody. Try and hold on to your seats. It's getting really exciting now. Oh, it's rolled all the way over. Good heavens. Can you believe it? Well, take care. You say, how can anything sleep with a limb sticking up? Let me tell you something, take care. Lions can sleep with their limbs sticking up, but I've got to tell you, I've known some human beings who can sleep remarkably, and in just about any position whatsoever. The most talented sleepers that I have ever met are guides or rangers. What happens is that they come through the gates to these reserves, and they immediately develop a disease known as sleeping sickness. Now, whether it is passed on to them by a tsetse fly, I cannot tell you, but they are imbued with a sense of tiredness permanently, and also a sense of enormous self-importance. And the two combine to make them able to sleep absolutely anywhere. I have seen them sleeping in vehicles at sightings before. I've done that myself, in fact, by mistake. I have seen them sleeping under tables in bomas from time to time. I have seen them sleeping standing up at meetings. So they are able to sleep in a variety of positions. I have also met people who can sleep sitting in this sort of position. I knew a lady once who could sleep in the lotus position. So I think human beings are particularly good at sleeping with their limbs in the air. So I recommend to you that you try it yourself, and you might be very lucky one day. The worst story I can tell you about that, of course, as these lions do absolutely nothing at all, is when I was imbued with the sleeping sickness disease, and I took a game drive, and we were sitting, in fact, with lions not much dissimilar to these ones, and I'll show you how I was sitting. I was sitting in the vehicle, and of course behind me there was this rack of seats, and on the rack of seats there was this kind of there was a bar, like a metal pole, a metal piece of piping, and I used to think I was very clever because I'd sleep with my hand like this, because then you see you can't see my eyes, so I could be fast asleep, and I'd say something stupid like, "Let us allow nature to speak for herself," and then I would say nothing, and I would fall asleep quietly like this, until one day I was sitting like this, and my elbow detached from where it is now, and my head went bang, and I woke up with an enormous sort of welt on the side of my head, and everyone knew that I had been fast asleep. It's a vehicle coming, don't worry. Anyway, that's my sleeping story. There's another vehicle coming through here. Seb was just a little worried because we've left the drone not far from here, and he was worried perhaps that an elephant was going to come and kick it. Sheila, you ask a good question, and it was a pretty easy one to answer. You say, how do we recognize different prides? Sheila, we recognize different prides by the areas that they live in. And so if you're not particularly familiar with an area, you'll learn which lions are which just by, the territories that they keep, because they are highly territorial. The other way to do it, of course, is just by recognizing the individuals. Now, in fact, the woman talking to me in my ear this evening, Nicola Austin, has a remarkable ability to recognize a lion from the second time she's seen it. Some people are able to do that. I'm not. I don't recognize the difference. They all look relatively similar to me. But some people can literally just recognize animals the second time they see them from their slightly different individual looks. But basically, with a pride like this, if you see lions in this area, you know it's going to be members of the Nkuhuma pride, even if it isn't the whole pride. Now Ellie, 7 years. Oh no, Ellie, I think that's not your name, Ellie, 7 years. Your name is Ellie, and you are 7, I imagine. Well, Ellie, 7 years. Lions have spots on them when they're born, and those spots that you're looking at there are on the youngest lion. You see that? Now, those spots will eventually almost completely disappear. Sometimes they disappear entirely, at other times they don't. At other times they will remain into adulthood for a little while. And so if you look from lion to lion here, you can see some of them have got a few spots and some don't. Now, why do they have those spots? Well, the answer is because when they are very little, they are hidden inside thick bushes. And inside those thick bushes, what you will find is that if they are that colour, just like a leopard, the light helps them to be camouflaged. And then when they get big, they move around in the grasslands, and in those grasslands, it helps to be this tawny colour that they are now, because they don't live in the thick bush anymore. I just need to try and help somebody get to this sighting, but my radio's not working, so I might have to just give them a little bit of a yell. While I do that, let's head across to Scott Dyson, who has found a predator of the leaves.
Yes, we have found a predator, not Tundi, not who we were hoping for, a very, very small predator that is part of the insect family, and it is a flower mantid. Oh, sorry, I gave it a bit of a fright. Let me just scare it back into a good spot. There we go. Poised and ready, and very, very small little mantid, and the telltale raptorial front legs perched up. They've kind of adapted their front legs not for walking but for catching their prey. So unlike most insects who use all 6 legs for transport and kind of standing around, these guys only use 4. Very cool. You'll also notice that their home, this Waltheria indica plants, has wilted. All of the leaves have kind of started closing up on one another, another indicator that the rain is not sufficient thus far in our summer here. Haven't seen these leaves looking like this for the entire month of December. It's just in the more recent weeks. I'd love to know what prey they actually catch, because they are so small, so it'd be interesting to see them kind of catching the buffalo equivalent. You know, for a lion taking down a buffalo, that's probably their biggest prey. You wonder what the biggest wrestling match a little flower mantid like this would have, and also what its kind of regular prey is. We need to maybe spend some time sitting a little bit longer with them. Very good. I've left VM in a bit of a awkward spot there, trying to get up from a seated position. Wonderful. It's always a relief this time of the evening as it begins to cool down after a long hot day. The light also starts becoming a beautiful golden hue. Guide Monkey, good to have you on safari with us. I'm just trying to clarify exactly what you want to find out. It was confusing me because it was quite a bizarre question. Are there any scent restrictions, i.e., are there any smells we are not allowed to put onto us or bathe in? No. There are not. I guess, other than just putting on deodorant so that you don't give your guests a horrible time, the animals really don't have too much concern for our normal smells. I guess if there was anybody that had a strange fetish with a strange scent, then that would become applicable. But for your average human being who showers or baths twice a day, and puts on whatever cologne they like, they're allowed to do so. So it's a free-for-all. Anything there, Herb? Okay. Just saw Herb keeping an eye on us, making sure everything's safe and sound, and I was wondering if he had found us another treat. He did find that flower mantid. Very good. We're going to send you back to James.
Hello everybody. Here we are still with the Nkuhuma pride. There is that horrible raking cough that little thing's got. Isn't that awful? RZR, you're wondering how much those cubs weigh. I think that little thing there probably weighs in the region of 12 kilograms or so, which is about 26 pounds, 28 pounds. That would be my guess. Not very big, but really a dreadful raking cough, hacking cough. So that's a little bit sad. Now, of course, we do know that in the Kruger National Park, Bovine tuberculosis can be a real killer for lions. It doesn't necessarily, it doesn't wipe them out quickly. It possibly shortens their lives slightly, but if they get malnourished, if they're not eating properly, and if there's a drought, for example, then it really can take hold. And obviously, just as with human beings and any other animal around the place, the young and the old and the infirm are the ones who are taken by disease first. So you'll find that all of these lions are carrying bovine tuberculosis, but that they will live normal lives relatively unless they don't eat sufficiently. And so that little one is not necessarily about to drop dead. Well, Scarlett, you ask a very interesting question. You say, is there an intelligence difference between lion genders? Absolutely, Scarlett. Female lions are totally idiotically gormless. Male lions, massively intelligent. You know, you can give a male lion a complex calculus problem to do, and they will solve it in seconds. And these females, goodness gracious me, you couldn't make them add 1 and 1 accurately more than twice in a row. Scarlett, I am, of course, being entirely facetious and sexist as well. I don't think so. I'm just trying to think how we would define intelligence in lions. Lions generally, Scarlett, are not known for their brains. They are known by animal trainers, for example, people who have animals for movies and that sort of thing. I drove a chap once, he came on safari with me, had 2 wives. It was quite interesting. Anyway, that wasn't the story. The point is that he said that the lions he owned, and, you know, we could debate what the pros and cons of that until the cows come home, but the point was that he said the lions he owned were completely dumb. You could not train them. You could train 1 in 10 lions. Leopard, he reckoned, was about as clever as a dolphin. You can teach them just about anything, except they are completely wild, and you cannot tame a leopard. And they're always just got that edge where if they look at you sideways, you think, ugh, that's a bit dangerous. Lions, not so much. Now, Scarlett, the most important thing about that, of course, is it's really, and Shemama, you're also interested in the subject. The question is really, are they as intelligent as they need to be? And obviously they are, within reason. They are intelligent enough to follow each other on the hunt. We still don't understand fully the communication that goes on between pride members during a hunt. And so while they might not be particularly clever from a human perspective, in that I don't think any of them is likely to write a great novel like Wuthering Heights, they are superb silent hunters, which we as human beings could never be. So in that point of view, from that point of view, they are much more intelligent than us. Male lions and female lions really are similar, I think. I mean, they have different roles within the pride structure, but they can both hunt in this kind of silent team, which I think is the mark of the intelligence that makes them as successful as they are. Cheetah are interesting because you can domesticate a cheetah. A cheetah is relatively easily domesticatable. They are far less likely to try and kill you than lions and leopards. And the great legend goes that Genghis Khan used to keep a stable of hunting cheetah, rather like you might keep hunting dogs if you were a lord in 18th century Britain or 19th century Britain, or indeed if you were very backward in 20th century Britain. Now, Linda, as far as they catch common colds like we do, yes, I imagine they do. I don't know if it's the same virus that would cause the problem for them, but I imagine there are a number of little sort of ailments that they get. Very few of them will ail them to the point that they can't move anymore. And remember, so many of our diseases come from the compact nature or concentrated nature in which we live. So diseases rush through a population and morph into much more virulent strains of themselves because we live in towns and cities and villages. They obviously don't. They live as they always have. Also, they eat everything that they're supposed to. They are not prone to eating rubbish. They don't eat preservatives. They don't eat all sorts of things that the media likes to tell us is good for us, but isn't actually. And that means that their immune systems, unless they're not eating properly, are at optimal operation. And so they're able to fight off things like a common cold much faster than human beings, which generally eat absolute rubbish if we can, and also we stress ourselves far beyond what we think our brains have evolved to be stressed. If you look back at our Stone Age ancestors, for example, you'll find that they probably worked, in other words, they went looking for food, for about 3 or 4 hours of the day, and the rest of the time was spent on leisure or flirting with the opposite sex, or indeed with the same sex. And that was the kind of extent of the day, and so 3 or 4 hours of your day was relatively stressful, trying to find enough to eat. The rest of the time, it was really up to you to do what you felt like doing. And that's how we evolved. And of course, not too long from then, that we find ourselves now in these rather hectic lifestyles, which I have absolutely no doubt create enormous problems for our health. These animals don't have those. Crazy Legs, you're wondering if I've seen the sick cub before. No, I haven't. In fact, my first meeting of this cub was 2 days ago, when we had them with the zebra kill. And I'm afraid I didn't notice any coughing then. 1, 2... I think all 5 lionesses are here. In fact, well, Amber Eyes is here, so that is definitely the same cub. All right, Stivovo has found something that is flappy and feathery, and, well, I'll let you guess what it is.
Thanks, James. Thank you, James. Thank James for the exercise you did today. I think he nearly killed me. Let him tell you about that if he wants to. Ladies and gentlemen, we have found ourselves a cuckoo. But which cuckoo? Could be one of two. I believe Noel saw a common this morning, and I saw an African the other day. So, folks, which one could it be? They are very similar. Very, very similar. And he's gone. I hope you all got a screenshot there, because I'd like to have a look at that when I get home. But the similarities between the cuckoo, these two species, are very, very close. Maybe if we have a quick look on the bird app. Let's go to the African cuckoo bird page. Similar birds. Common cuckoo and the African. Let's see what this reveals. Okay, select 2 more, sorry. Okay, so essentially the beak of the African is more yellow, and the common has got more black on the tip. The one I saw the other day definitely had more yellow to it, and this one that I saw now seemed to have a bit more yellow on the beak. But the visual I got was the same as yours, but I didn't get a screenshot. So please, those of you who were able to get screenshots, please send it through. But my gut feeling is that that was an African cuckoo. Fantastic. Hang on a second. I have got an update from Herbie. Or I think it might be Rexon. Standing by. We're going to go to Scott Dyson. He's got a big elephant on foot. Standing by?
We do. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to show you Kirsty. That was the door to the final control room that we're trying to show you there. The elephant literally just walked straight past it. And there he is there. That little yellow sign is the sign down to our camp. And what a treat as we got back to come across this young elephant bull. He's got no idea we're here. And it's exactly how we want the situation to pan out. Thankfully, the wind is in our favor. And there's a great lesson in this. Very often when you get close to camp, you kind of put your head down and start marching and think you're not going to come across anything dangerous. But this, like I said, is a classic example of how you really do need to stay cautious right up until the last moments. Wonderful stuff. Well, we're going to be sending you from being on foot on the ground all the way up into the sky with the drone.
One or two of them getting up. Just beautiful stuff. Sorry about the noise of the drone. We'll go up a little bit, but as you can see, the lion's utterly unconcerned by the sound of the drone, which is marvellous. And there we are, sitting with them. Okay, and now we're going to go back across the drone. How's that? Is that working properly? There we go. Isn't that amazing? Look at them sleeping there. So content and happy. Oh, we can count them quickly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 underneath the bush there. 12 maybe? I think they're 12. Yeah, 12 is with the cub. Nikki agrees with me. Cub is number 12. Isn't that wonderful? What an amazing view that is. It is an absolutely bizarre view. You can see this drainage system here. Very difficult for vehicles to get into. I will give you now a view of the sun about to set. That is the south you're looking to. And we'll just turn slowly around towards... Oh, you're looking north. We'll turn slowly around towards the sun. Ah, isn't that beautiful? The mountains just in the background behind that sun, which you won't be able to see. There is the camp. See, we're not far from camp. You'll see the Gallagher pan. We'll spotted Seb. Isn't that just beautiful? Somewhere in there, people are preparing Sebastian's birthday dinner. All right, everyone, that's going to be it from us. Thank you very much for having us, or coming with us today. It's been a marvellous time, and I hope that you will join us tomorrow again at 0500 Central African Time. Until then, enjoy these last views of Africa. We'll see you very early in the morning.